couple of days I've been working with a last week I showed a Excel creator. I'm using a library called XLSX that is doing this. And I think last week the whole process of my discussion was that I was struggling with getting it to work, and I just kept going with it, and finally got it to work. So now I need to take this and actually put it into a file and make it workable. So I wanted to go through that here and just talk with you all the best ideas. What I want to do right now is use the web viewer as a processing engine and really put money where my mouth is, where my thoughts are about using the web viewer as a processing engine in the way that I'm doing it. So that's an additional factor. I assume Adam, anybody, are you using the web viewer as a processing engine that's not displaying anything, but just processes the data in some way? Is anybody doing that?
Not in the production, no.
Not in production? Marcus, you're doing it?
I'm doing it in production.
And it works really well. Okay.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I'm doing it somewhere. I don't remember where.
Okay.
I don't remember what I was doing. I've got like a 1 pixel by 1 pixel thing on the web viewer.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I asked Clay about getting that server side, and he said he didn't seem too keen on it. He said that the other thing that everyone's pushing for Python on server, but
okay.
I don't know. He didn't seem too excited about
it. Okay, well let's talk through it. So I have a system here that I built last week that exports the data, and it works nicely in its current form. What I have set up was that my load widget script goes and gets the data from the customers table, and it just exports it. At the moment, there's only one. It just returns all of the records and it exports it out. And we talked last week about this process, and it works nicely. If I open up this file, it's beautiful, and it has exported. It has exported the columns, and I have at the moment hard coded the names of them, and so forth. So let me just open this up here. Get it open. So here it is. We did this last week. We got the company address and state. And unlike what you would do with normal Excel imports, I can define the width of the columns as well as I can set the type of column and so forth, the data types for the columns and so forth. So working through that with the XLSX library, it's actually called Sheet.js, but that's the import name. So I wanted to try this with just putting the web viewer on. Well, I actually have the web viewer. So the web viewer right now is not displayed. It's just a small thing. We talked about this last week. So I want to put it over here on this customer list layout and then use it in this process and just see how doable this is. Obviously it is. I've done this before. Many of you have done that. So it shouldn't be that difficult. But what I was really interested in was dealing with the found set. And so I had to think about that. Like, okay, I've got a found set of records here rather than 206. I've just got the 6, the Texas ones, and I want to export this. So at the moment, when I hit this button, it will use the web viewer that's on here. And I actually have to, now that I think about it, I have to create a field here. Let me create a field in this customers. I'll just do this for right now. Export, and it's a container field. Let's see, what's it? R. And I'll just make it global just to not deal with the problems. Okay, so I've got a container field here. I'll just put it up here. Move things down. What are you, Marcus? What are you doing what are you processing in the web viewer?
I think you actually helped me with this, or we did it about a year and a half ago. Remember, I had that massive set of JSON, and I needed to do calculations. And when I ran it in FileMaker using a while, it literally took a minute. And we ran it in the JavaScript web viewer, and that same sort calculation took less than a second.
Okay.
So basically, it's just an in out. It's just manhandling this massive JSON object.
And you did this. We did this a year and a half ago, and it's still just working fine. Do your
fine.
Your clients use it regularly?
Well, I am the client. It's in the system. It's in the system that I did for my janitorial company. But now that I've done it, I'd be very comfortable putting it out to a customer because it's just so stable. It just, and I think it's just like the kind of standard async process or synchronous process that exists in the JavaScript, right? The JavaScript is called, it runs the calculation, and it calls then a secondary script that pushes the data back out, and that secondary script then causes the rendering to happen. Because this was before I understood about FM Gopher.
Yep.
But in essence, it's not really FM Gopher because you're not initiating it from the web viewer. You're initiating it from outside the web viewer coming back in.
Yeah.
So it is like a two-leg kind of process. You need to have a starter script and a receiver script.
Right. So if I were to run this from this layout, it accesses the web viewer, and then looks like we're going to get an error. Let's see if I have an error in here. Can't find variable load widget. So it accesses it in here, and it should dump the stuff in there. So let me debug this. I haven't actually tried any of this. I just took it off of the layout. We're in dev mode. Get data from customers. So I'm filling it in with stuff that I don't have yet, but that shouldn't be the problem. Here's my
How is it supposed to populate in that export? Is the JS calling a script?
It is. So there it goes. There we go. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah. So I think I had this problem last week, and I haven't debugged it yet, where it takes for some reason I'm having to hit it twice. No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Okay. So
that might be the JS rendering issue, right? Like, or no, you're just sitting on the static page, but that is something that this might be the origins of why I started wanting to figure out how to make the JavaScript widget actually do the fetch when it's ready, rather than I walk through the script, open up the layout, and then try to hit. And sometimes it was there, and sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
So that has to get managed somehow. That delay, right, in getting the web viewer ready.
So let me just see. There's got to be a way to. Yeah, see, that didn't work. So it's the first time it just doesn't work. So I'll debug that. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to take this data rather than the data from the entire table. I want to take the found set. So again, this is meant to export these records. And what I did, so here's how I go about this. And I would love some feedback. I would love some thoughts. In order to get the data that I want exported, I don't want to rely on the field names that FileMaker provides in an export, because those are just bad field names, right? We all know that. They're showing the table name, the 2 colons, and then whatever weird, wacky file name we came up with. So the only way that I know how to do this at the moment is just to create an as.json field that contains a JSON record of the value and the property turning into the field name, the column header of my Excel document. I think at the moment, this might be the only way. I don't know, maybe I could do a mapping of things, but I feel like this is just the easiest. Unfortunately, this is also tedious to create, and I don't like having to create it manually. So I create that JSON, and then I create a list of JSON, and that's the thing that I then turn into an array that I send into my data. As far as collecting, I like this method because it's going to work with, the summary will work with the found set of records, right? So I don't have to pass any parameters into the data API. I don't even know what parameters they did because I'm not tracking the find mechanism that they're using. I'm just going into find mode, and letting them type in something and then producing a found set. So I think that's the best way to collect the data for the JSON without using the data API. Gabe, you just reminded me by me looking at you. You actually have an Excel or execute SQL thing that collects it and then turns it into an array, right?
Yeah, I suppose the way of doing it with the calculate summary field is fine if you never evaluate that with a full table of records, because that's when it's going to have to then.
It depends on the number of records.
Yeah, that's where FileMaker will grind because obviously FileMaker will display you the top 25 records, but if you have a calculated summary field, it'll beach ball FileMaker because it will try and do it for the 10,000 a million records in there, which is fine so long as you never touch or display that summary field until you've got a found set and you've got something around it that limits that size, but it does then have to effectively walk every field in the data in that table if you have the full found set, if you've done like show all records or something like that. So that's probably something I would avoid in production because I know that at some point I might trigger it.
Well,
that summary field across a huge set of records.
Okay, that certainly is a point. But we can't use, so FileMaker 21 has that JSON make array, but it works with a list of records, which is what I would use. Unfortunately, how do I get the list of records right here that's on this layout? I feel like lists are always from a different context, right?
Well, but there are many custom functions that will list the local records, right? I use list view, and basically it just uses the extend FileMaker function, and then there's some way of kind of collecting the current the field, and then you extend it to the next one, and that what works. So I'll often do that. I'll use some kind of custom function to get a local list.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few. There's like a while that has like a get nth record.
Yeah, you can use while as well.
Which is another way that you do where you say like get found list, where you want to say right, provide it a field and say give me a list of all of the UUIDs, the record primary keys, all in the found set, and in the same way that has to walk all of the records in the found list when you call it.
Yeah,
but that you would normally then only have that in a script, which and obviously if you summary field the only place it's ever referenced is in a script, then you only pay the cost of that summary field when because it's calculated when it's shown. So you just have to be a bit more defensive about checking that someone hasn't gone to a table with all of the records in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're right. Production might be a thing, but this is a found set of records. That's not an excuse because they could still come to this layout, show all 25,000 records, and then accidentally or on purpose hit that export button. And because I'm in a found set or a whole set, I can't really use on server to do this because I would have to pass the find parameters up to server in the PSOS, and that defeats the whole purpose. I might as well just use the API. Yeah.
Why not why don't you put a hide condition on the export button so they can't hit it if
record count equals current found count.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Didn't think of that. Good idea. All right. So
have to be in a found set before they can even export it.
Because also if you use the record count versus then it doesn't, the FileMaker doesn't request all of the records, it just gets the count. Whereas if you do anything that touches a field in the record, then the client has to fetch all of those records to be able to evaluate that calculation in the summary, the global summary field.
And also I could control their find, which is what I kind of have preferred to do typically, where they go into a specific mode, they have maybe global fields or whatnot to let them enter their criteria. I could take all that criteria and put it into the execute data API script step and produce the found set. And then I could pass it up to server because I can build the query locally, pass up the query, get the results, pass it back. Maybe I'm dealing with the issue that we've had before. All right, so all of those are legitimate. It's collecting the data is certainly the biggest part of this. So let me just do this and see. So I've got the load widget but script. I've got to get data from customers. This is using the execute data API. I'm going to remove it and use this one instead. And I'll say get data. I'll do JSON make array, list of values. That would be this. And it would be, I'll just do that. And I'll be JSON object. I'm starting to use this a lot more, but I feel like for this especially, I still have to check and see if this function is available inside of my client's version before I let it run. I don't know if there's,
what version was JSON make array added in? Was it 20?
I think it was the latest.
Yeah, it
one.
was the last one.
It's 21.
It was the latest? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, let's see. So anyway, I always have to check that. Let's see, I'm pulling it up. Yeah, 2021. 21, yep. They do have some new functions coming, right, in ETS that will let us walk through the list and append to, I forget what the name of it's called, but they're going to let us just take an existing array and just push to the end
Yeah.
all the
Is
time.
that not in push and pop isn't in 21? It's in
No.
ATS.
Yeah.
The plus,
believe it
you're talking
is.
about that. Maybe the plus is, because isn't that
I thought that was added in. Oh, I forget now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look. All right, so let's just use this. We'll exit the data out. So I'm going to run this again with this new script, get data, or this old one. So it's going to take the found set of records and it's going to export it. So hopefully this will work. I'm just going to let it run and see. So my data is, yep, just a few records. That's great. Oh, you know what? I'm going to get an error because what I'm doing in my JSON is I'm creating a new JSON. I'm creating a new array with the existing JSON, and I'm pulling out the field data. So I want to get rid of this, or I'll just use this. I'll just do this data and comment this stuff out because this is not, this is not as. I personally don't mind this, having to write this hard-coded map in here because it's going to come from FileMaker. But in my client's case, it's going to be 4 different exports from, I think, 4 different tables. So I've just got to let that all be controlled by FileMaker. So let's see how this works. Got an issue with the web viewer showing up there. That's interesting to me. I've never seen it be active like that. Okay, that worked. Let's run it again. I'll have to debug that issue.
I think sorry to interrupt you. The array push was added in 20. Yeah, so it's under the
it is
set element. You can just do plus into an array without having to count the array length. I think that was 20 or 21. I can't remember. I think it was 20. Doesn't actually say on there because he just extended the existing set element.
That's good to know. Okay. Console.log data. Oh, you know what? I'm messing myself up here. Sorry, one sec. Yeah. Okay, so the data.
I think there is some new. I think there is an ETS that's push and pop. I think which is taking out the last element of an array.
Okay.
I think is new. I can't remember.
There we go. All right, let's see. Real data, stupid real data. Just is there any more real datas in here? They're commented out. Okay. All right. So now we did the export. It had only 3. It had all of the columns this time. It had address, city, state, company, zip. Those came from my as JSON, so that's great. that I got to control it here, which is okay. I think, unfortunately, I'll show you my client example file. There's like 50 fields. So I'm not very thrilled about having to create a JSON thing for that. There's got to be a snippet, a raycast snippet, or an extension or something that will help you do that. Anyway, all right. So it exported. Let's see if it exported correctly. Texas states. And there we go. Great. So now I have a couple issues there, but now I have some export of the found set, and I'm ready to go. Why is this? I don't understand why this is doing that. So why is it turning white? Because I know that they're going to fix that in
it has it. You can't do a transparent background. At least I haven't figured out a way.
No, you can't, because it's in the NS window, whatever, and in Windows it draws on top of the application. So the only way to do it is to set a background color to the same as what's around it.
Yeah, that's what I do. But I usually either make it 1 pixel by 1 pixel, or I'll shove it all the way off the layout, except for maybe 1 pixel, 1 or 2 pixels.
Yeah, what is it? Is it WebDirect where it doesn't process if it's off the layout, but it does in FileMaker, regular FileMaker?
Yeah, we talked about that last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
It has to be at least on by a pixel. So yeah.
Yeah. But if I don't need any of our employees to see anything in it, I'm just using it for that, then yeah, I'll
And
move
it can be hidden under an object, right? So you can put
And
you can put a square over top of it, right?
It can
Or a
in
button.
Mac. In Windows, it always draws on top.
yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Windows Windows
There's
is
the
difficult to hide
Windows
it.
thing where a popover can't go over the top of a web viewer. So if you have it
Yeah.
above it, it just won't go down over it, because if FileMaker knows that in Windows the web viewer is drawn over the top of FileMaker in the way it does the like windowing composition in Windows. So yeah, that works on a Mac. And FileMaker Go, it'd work in FileMaker Go, but not. And it would probably work in WebDirect, but not in Windows.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Is it does work in WebDirect, because I've done that. I put it behind
I
that
think so. Yeah.
object.
All right. So, I mean, I think this is a practical way to do this. Obviously, the UI needs to be dealt with, but I could let my clients find any found set of records, and then I could get this script specifically, or this could be part of a bigger process where the script that loads the widget would run. It would do its thing. It would go get the code. It would put it all into the web viewer. I do have an issue with it at the moment, and it could be used. So this script basically could be a subscript that is doing the processing. It's accessing the web viewer that's hidden on the layout or off the layout, and it's doing what it needs to do. This is, Marcus, I forget, did we set it up like this, or do we have like a processing window that we use? Do you remember?
No, it's just like this. It's just a single pixel, and there's no kind of UI or display or anything.
But you have a button on there, and I assume whatever it does, it sends back to FileMaker, and then it processes it on. What does it do again? What is the end result of that? To stick it into a file, CSV or something?
What
It
I do is
processes
I
large
get a large JSON, and then I'm sorting the JSON, and when we developed it, I didn't realize I could do it in the existing widget. So I've got a widget. I've got a data tables widget that renders the JSON, but I needed to manipulate it. So I created a separate manipulation JavaScript element that I put in a different web viewer, and
Okay.
it was shortly thereafter, probably largely because of working with you in our conversations, I realized I could have just done this in the existing JavaScript. I didn't need to have two on the same window, but
Yeah.
it works. I didn't bother.
Okay, it works. It works just fine. So this is a practical thing. All I would need is the web viewer and the button, and of course the script. And as long as the the script that is going to process this gets the right data, then it can throw it into the web viewer. The web viewer can do its thing, and it will, then we have another script that is, where's mine, save file, that's called with the final results. Whether it's sending back JSON, or in this case, a XLS file that needs to be decoded, or I don't know what else. I don't think there's a limit, but I don't know like what are the practical uses other than creating a file maker, an Excel file. So that's interesting to me. Let's see, Florida companies. I'm going to work on this worksheet where I put in the worksheet name. So this will be FL, where I can set the worksheet name. It's not perfect yet, but it's on its way. So there it is. Oh, that broke. Oh, I know what I did. And .xlsx. There we go.
Right.
I don't know if, I don't think I can I pass the file name in? The base 64 decode needs a file name, doesn't it?
Yes.
When it comes
Well,
from the web viewer?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay. So let's try this again. FL companies. There we go. Export this out. That's nice. It opens up. There they are. Great.
Yep.
So this is a very practical thing. And what I like about this is I'm not hard coding the JavaScript into the web viewer. I have it. I'm still in development mode, but I will have it in here. This is nice because I can then have 20 different processing libraries that do different things. And I could use the same web viewer on different layouts and just, ping which library I want to use, which in this case, my script load widget is pinging the XLS library when it's in production and not in development mode. So this could be, process, I could call this process found records into XLSX file. There we go. So now I have this that could be used anywhere. And I could even make this even more valuable and more useful across my system by not tying the web viewer to this layout. Instead, I could put the web viewer on a different layout, pop up a pop processing card window, let it do its work. So then this web viewer can be used anywhere in the system.
Yep.
Is this
The HTML file, this is generated by the build process in your Node.js project.
That's correct. Yeah, just like always, it'll be put into this field.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
this field. So this isn't perfect yet. Like I still have to go to this layout. I have to find it. It's not that it's not perfect. It's just the way that I'm choosing to do it. I think, most of my clients have said, hey, can we put that layout way off so that we don't see it flash? So that's a legitimate change. There's thousands of ways to do it. I could set the name of the widget into a global field in here, into my wherever I'm at, my context, and I could then relate it to the HTML table based on the widget name. That's perfectly good. There's a lot of ways that I could go get this. Execute SQL works just fine for this. My self-booting widget process takes uses an execute SQL in a custom function to go fetch the data. So I can refine all of that to work that way, but there it is. So this seems very practical, and I don't know if it's my bias, but I'm wondering, what is the problems with this? What are the problems with this?
Well, the biggest one that I've encountered that I would think about is just that delay of rendering it. Like you got to manage that window.
Yep.
Which isn't hard. It's just, other than that, it's like I said, it's been rock solid for me ever since we implemented it, and we even implemented a shitty version of it, or I implemented a shitty version of it. So
I never do anything like that.
No, I know you don't. That was all me,
Okay.
man.
Um, Mark, you said you use this, the 1 pixel by 1 pixel. So does that mean that you have the web viewer on the layout of the context where they're going to do something with that data in the web viewer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
don't do a separate window or anything like a card window, a processing, sorry, a processing card window or anything. All right.
No,
Okay.
no, it's directly on the layout.
So this really works. This works nicely. My client reached out to me yesterday and said, "Yeah, let's go with this." They sent me a sample version of their. So I'll show you what it is. This is where it makes me ill because there's so many fields that I'm going to have to work with, and these are all like, here's a barcode, secondary. So I have to rename every single one of these, and there's, what is that? A or B, B, BZ. So that's 52 fields. No, that's 26 times 3. What is that? 60, 78. That's 78 fields that they're interested in exporting out with custom column names. So that doesn't sound too much fun, does it?
With
These-
widgets.
I would use virtual list. You could name it, manipulate it without having to, try to futz with it like that.
Yeah. You mean virtual list and then just export from that virtual list using FileMaker's built-in methods?
No, I would still do it with your JavaScript.
Okay.
Still
But
do
use
it.
a virtual list instead of,
Yeah.
is there, I don't know. So, okay, that's a good point. What would you suggest? I've been running this in my head. Do I want to create a map inside of my FileMaker tables that maps this field name to the correct, quote, correct field name, the custom field name? When you do exports, how would you do this if you were using that templating version? Is there a better way to create the custom field name, column names with an export? Other virtual list is one of them. Is there any other ways?
If you do it the old-fashioned way, which is like the XLT export to make a with whatever it's called, the file you have to make, you have to export the XLT and then use that to transform in the export. You have to have the resulting field names in the template, so you have to have those saved into the columns. The way I do it in the way I've done that is, as Jay says, a virtual list, because in my instance it's grabbing a load of records from different places across the system from different tables, and they want it out in a particular way. So I just then have a script that builds a big JSON object, which then the virtual list records just refer to,
Okay.
element 1, line 2, and then when you do the export, they're hard coded in. But it is a faff to do it that way, because if they want a different column, you have to manually modify the XLT, so you can like make it from an Excel spreadsheet initially, but you have to put the FileMaker gubbins in there to make it put it in the export. So if you can read XML, you can go in and modify, the format. So this is a much nicer way of doing it with the library in the web viewer, and it would probably be the way I would do it if I was to do it again. But
you still have to create that as that JSON object, right? Because that's what drives the export. So this is where I get to define them. It's still pretty buried in the calculation. But
then I suppose what you're trading there is a field in the table versus having a script which just says go to the first record, settle these, and they're just either with an off-screen hidden window or just walks the records you're looking at, and then calls the kind of which calls the script in there. That way it sort of moves the logic from a calculated field in the database into a script. So it just depends if that's a bit more flexible in some ways because you can make changes to that to say what fields get included without having to make schema changes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, schema changes suck. Having to make the changes inside of the code and then redeploy sucks. I'm not sure which is the less of two, the lesser of two
Sucky?
evils. Huh?
The less sucky.
Yeah, I was like, this is really devolving. I don't want to be like that.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's the speed difference isn't much. If you just have a script that just walks the records and builds a JSON object, it's going to be imperceptibly slower than using the summarized JSON. It's not. It's
well, let's do that.
For me, I find that easier because if I need to change a field or grab another field in there, I'll just go in that script and as it loops over them, just have it, add another field in there with a different name or whatever.
So we're going to go to the record here. We're on the same context. We're going to loop through. We'll do GTR except last result. So we're going to start with the data. Let's just get it set up correctly. Set variable data, and then make it an array. And then we're going to do set variable data. We're going to go JSON set element. We'll say data. And then based on the examples, I haven't used this. So it looks like we have to, what is this? This is just a property. So creates an array, adds one element, a JSON object, using the plus syntax. Then uses that syntax to reference the last element, to reference that element as the last element.
So that's doing two things. You basically want just the first one of those just to say plus.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do quotes, quotes, that plus that quote as JSON object, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I should just make an array of objects.
So let's watch that. Data that's beautiful. I forgot about that. Yeah. And then it adds it again. We're on record 3. We've added, yep, beautiful. Okay. So this
what is that plus doing within brackets?
It's just adding it as another item to the array. So rather than having to count the length of the array and specify the index to put it in like one more normally.
Shut the front door. That is awesome.
You used to have to do declare an iterator variable and then set it to I-1 and then increment the iterator as you would loop over.
Let's watch this. Let's watch this grow. So we've got 4 elements here. We are on the 4th record.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next one, 5th record, and we set it in there. And now we have 5 elements. 1, 2, 3.
Shut up. That's
it's basically just adding to an existing array.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or if you use the minus, it would be taking them out, right?
There is no minus.
You can't do it. You can use the
I thought I saw a minus there.
Oh, is there? Maybe.
Well, can you bring that documentation back up? Yeah, underneath the plus. Oh, that's a sorry, I'm on it.
Colon is basically get me the last element out of the array. So if you want to read the last element out of an array without counting its length first and then working out the highest index, that's what the colon character does.
Colon is for that. Okay.
The other
what's the name of this function again?
JSON set element.
It's just a set element.
It's just the cool.
Yeah, it's just a custom. It's another bit of syntax for setting an element. The other advantage is doing it this way is you don't need the get as JSON field in the table because you're just doing a calculated field. Obviously, when you set each of those objects, you can put it in there. So all of your logic and how you want those column names to be set can be set in there, and you can then do things like if you want to have, rather than just have the properties at the moment, you're saying name, city, whatever, you can do get field name as the property. So you can then automatically set that.
So let's do that. So I always do the word 1.
Sorry, I got a call.
So we're going to take we're going to take the as JSON calculation out of the record, the table, and we're going to instead put it into a variable. A variable called one. I always use one as my like current record name. Zip. And then I'll adjust this to reference that instead of the calculated field. So now all of my stuff is in here, and I can easily update that, and that should still work, not a problem, because we're taking one is right here, and then one gets pushed into there. Great. One push, one push, one push. Very nice. And this is the point of it. It's an array, so it's a defined order. I may have wanted to sort these by state and in company name. So this is how I want my export to be. And that function will
Honor that, right?
respect that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the plus is basically like kind of like JSON push and or kind of like the JavaScript push thing and that you do adds to the end of the array.
Yep.
Okay.
Look at FileMaker, huh? Get up here doing the high tech stuff.
Why can't they use
What is the what's the colon do?
It references syntax to reference the last element in the array in order to add another key value paired to the object.
So Gabe or Jeremy, do you know if we did delete JSON object and you did a colon, could you do get element colon array whatever, and then do delete element colon to kind of work back up a list?
I don't know. We can try it. Let me make sure. Then uses the colon syntax to reference the last that element as the last element.
Yeah.
In order to add another key value paired to that object. Okay. I don't understand why they're. Go ahead.
I don't know. Their wording is confusing of what it does.
So
It just adds an okay.
What it does is, so it creates an object here. It's because we're putting it in a dot A. So that creates this array element, this one right here. And then it says, I don't want to add another array element. I want to add another property to that object that is the last one in the array.
Oh, that's what the colon is doing. It's pushing it into the last object.
Yes.
Okay. It's not adding another array object to that
Right.
whole JSON value pair.
Yeah.
Because obviously, what you could do is you could say, rather than set .a to number, you could say add an object, and inside of that object declare those keys and properties. But in this instance, you're doing this two separate steps to say set a key called A inside of the object to 5, and then a key called B.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I would just stick with my pattern. Create one JSON object with the current records. Information. And of course, this could all be done in a while statement too. So whether I am traversing the records or I'm using get nth record.
But this might be a good instance, Jeremy, where you want to turn the flush off. Flush always. Turn that completely off.
It wouldn't make any difference because you're not modifying the record. So the flushing is writing changes to the record. So it would only make a difference if you had a set field inside of the loop.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I've never changed that at all.
Because it's just modifying a variable. There's no flushing on.
Yeah, I knew there was something around iterating a layout. I do know when this was demonstrated last Engage, there was an enormous performance boost if you use the flush in the right context.
Yeah.
So this is nice.
There's also a FileMaker cache issue with JSON set element, which I think is addressed in the next release, where like FileMaker only keeps one variable like in memory. So if you're setting two different like JSON objects in a loop, you can basically it can force it to kick it out of the cache, but you wouldn't see that in this instance, I don't think, because you're looping over the same variable and just updating it.
So this is nice. I like the idea, taking it out of the schema, putting it into a script. It's a lot more accessible.
Because the other thing you could do, Jeremy, if you wanted to maintain the column names, is rather than having a property called company, you could do get field name, customer's company name, and use the actual fields as the keys.
Yep.
So that way you then, the data that's getting put into that object has the keys for it is the same as what the FileMaker field name is.
Sure, but I think that's the whole point of it. Not using the built-in XLS export is that you get your custom field names.
Yeah, if you want to change them, but
yeah, I don't. Yeah. This is nice.
Can I completely side note random? I just discovered this from a colleague the other day. Do you know that if you click on send perform script, if you command click or control click on the script name that you set, it jumps to that script?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It's been around
like, oh,
for years.
Awesome. I know it's not new. It's just it was new to me.
It's annoying. Clicking option will open it up in here in this specify script, which is, well, or maybe it just doesn't do anything because that's the same thing. But yeah, clicking command on it will open it up into a window. Yeah. Beautiful. So this is nice.
I didn't realize you were such a noob.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Also, did you know that when you have a global field, you don't have to, like, it's available everywhere?
Okay.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah. I'm gonna go get some.
I do the same thing. I always end up going and searching for the script name over there and pulling it up. So I don't use it. I feel like I saw that once at a Engage and just have never used it. But that is cool.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that in documentation once, but I'd never really paid attention to it. I'm just trying to figure out where you would do the colon at.
well, if you're
Maybe if you wanted to specify the order, because you could do that with just a regular set, right? Add to an object.
Yeah.
But I think if you wanted to specify that it's going on the end instead of just getting alphabetically extending.
No. The alphabetical order is always takes place. This is just the command to add the element as Jeremy already explained. Just to add in the last element of the array, and then
I see.
When
So if this was an array of 10 objects, it would only add it to the last object. It would add that element to the last object.
Yeah.
I got you.
Exactly. And the alphabetical order is then reassigned. Yeah. So when you put B and then A, so when you display it, the A will be before the name.
So in a scenario,
only if the JSON's formatted as a JSON, you get it.
Yep.
So in a scenario, you can do it to where if, let's say, Jeremy's got a relationship in his system over here that goes to a table that says, here's the primary contact, but here's another relationship that's a maintenance director. And let's just say he wants to add the maintenance director only if it exists, but he doesn't want an empty maintenance director item in there for everything.
Yeah.
Only if it exists, then that's where something like the colon would be, as he's looping through records or something, getting them.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're wanting to like append stuff, like the plus is like it's like counting the length of the array and adding 1 and setting it to 1 higher, whereas like the colon is like counting the length of the array and updating the last one. So yeah, if you've got like if you're creating the array in a script step and then you've got an if statement that's like if this is that, then also add this or change that, it allows you to do that kind of in order of creating it without having to have a really, have the complex logic inside of kind of setting the object.
Yeah. But it only puts it in there. So if out of these 9 records, if one of them doesn't have a maintenance director, then you're not going to have an empty array object in there for item in there for maintenance director on all the rest of them. Only for the one that's got one, basically.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear that. I wonder if that would cause JavaScript to fail, because if a property doesn't exist and it's trying to read it, empty is a valid value inside of a property. So
Yeah.
I think that would cause a failure in my JavaScript if I was trying to read from that property that doesn't exist. So I don't know. I don't like having different array elements of these same records have different properties in them. I like them all to have the same properties, even if some of them,
Even if they're empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a legitimate way to do that. What you said was, if it exists, let's go ahead and add that secondary contact to this object, the last object. Yeah.
So in other words, the moral of the story is use the colon sparingly and make sure you use it correctly.
Yeah. Have you ever used it? Anyone, Gabe? Have you ever used it? The colon?
No, I haven't, because I've only recently-ish moved all of my clients to the more recent versions, and I've done it the old way, and I haven't gone back to replace it, because if the code already works, if I'm already counting the length of the array as I'm looping over it, which is the way you had to do it previously, and then setting it by the I-1 or I+1, depending on what you're doing, if you start with a record count or a yeah.
I just thought of an interesting use case. So my client wants to be able to type the columns. No, never mind. That doesn't make sense. He wants to be able to type the columns. So what I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, because this is just the column. Interesting.
But what you could do in this instance is, let's say before the user generates it, you could pop them up a dialog that says pick which columns you want to include in it, and you show them a set of checkboxes in FileMaker, and they tick, and then based on if they've ticked it, then when you create it, you only put that parameter into there if they've ticked it in like a global field that says include these parameters, and then when you build the JSON array, you only then include the columns that you want to include.
That's a great use case for this. So we'll say, like, we'll just do this. If call it, let's see, we'll do, I'll just do this quick. Filter values. What am I trying to do here? If filter values list of columns, company, what is that? Is it get, oh my God, I'm get value count. If that equals 1, we're just going to, I don't know if this is the right syntax. Then we'll do set variable data, JSON set element, colon, right? Colon dot company with the company value, correct? Is that what you were trying to?
Yeah. So you can do it inside of a separate if, but obviously you can do that logic inside of the where you set your JSON object, where you can just have a big list of them that says, right, if they've ticked it in there, then
I'll throw this in the chat, but here's what I normally would do. I'd loop through by setting an iteration variable. But instead of doing that, you can just do it like that. And those are to do the exact same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except for you're not updating that variable every time you loop through.
There you go.
Adding it.
That's a great use case for it, because you're right. You're just adding it to the last one. Yeah, that's a good idea. Cool. That's fun. That's fun to to work through. So anyway, so that's great. I'm going to remove that. We'll remove this. We'll remove, wait, can I do this? Okay, yeah, now, so I'm setting it into array. That's all I'm doing. So I'm setting it into array. I'm not using the list function or I'm not using the as JSON. I'm not using the list of JSON. That saves me some having to summarize things, and it keeps the customer's table, pure with just data in it. Then it allows me to do the work inside of a script, which is better. Cool. That's great stuff. That's fun.
And also the advantage of that is that when it's get as JSON, it has to all be in the same table. Whereas you may want some data from a related something or other, so it's easier to manage that.
Gosh, that's incredible, because I have a couple client files that I hope they're all up to date, but I'm doing a lot of unstored as JSON calculations, and that's awful. This is what I should be doing. Although, it's kind of it's just what it is. I'll just take the as JSON calculation out, put it into this script, do this plus mechanism, and then it saves me the summary delays, which is a pain to watch, and it saves me everything else. So that's a good idea. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the demonstration of using the web viewer that's over here as a processing engine, using JavaScript to handle something that FileMaker can't do effectively. And it's really not that difficult. It's the web viewer object itself. Obviously, we need that. It's a script that will get the data that it needs, activate the web viewer that it needs with the code, and then marry the two together, pushing the data into the code. And then it also needs a receiving script, which will take the results from the process from the web viewer and bring it back to FileMaker. So that's a great setup, and it's really not that much. It's these two scripts basically, and maybe a subscript that goes and gets data, and then a couple of objects. If you use the web viewer on a separate processing card window layout, then you could do anything with that. You could have 20 different processing function libraries in here, and you just call whichever one you want from a certain context, from a certain button, and make sure it has the right data, and off you go. So great stuff. You could call that card window at any time from anywhere with the right data, process it, send it back to FileMaker, and you're good to go.